Genius Quotes presents Sigmund Freud's Genius Quotes. A man should not strive to eliminate his complexes, but to get into accord with them. They are legitimately what directs his conduct in the world. Sadism is all right in its place, but it should be directed to proper ends. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of a lasting existence. Neurosis is the inability to tolerate ambiguity. The conscious mind may be compared to a fountain playing in the sun and falling back into the great subterranean pool of subconscious from which it rises. Love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. Everywhere I go, I find that a poet has been there before me. If a man has been his mother's undisputed darling, he retains throughout life the triumphant feeling, the confidence in success, which not seldom brings actual success along with it. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. The first requisite of civilization is that of justice. The goal towards which the pleasure principle impels us, of becoming happy, is not attainable, yet we may not, nay, cannot, give up the efforts to come nearer to realization of it by some means or other. I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash, no matter whether they publicly subscribe to this or that ethical doctrine or to none at all. That is something that you cannot say aloud or perhaps even think. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. The act of birth is the first experience of anxiety, and thus the source and prototype of the affect of anxiety. The psychoanalysis of neurotics has taught us to recognize the intimate connection between wetting the bed and the character trait of ambition. The psychical, whatever its nature may be, is itself unconscious. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. Neurotics complain of their illness, but they make the most of it, and when it comes to talking it away from them, they will defend it like a lioness her young. Opposition is not necessarily enmity. It is merely misused and made an occasion for enmity. If youth knew. If age could. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the preferably sudden satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. Yes, America is gigantic, but a gigantic mistake. If you can't do it, give up. The goal of all life is death. He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. Love and work. Work and love. That's all there is. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Men are more moral than they think, and far more immoral than they can imagine. Civilization began the first time an angry person cast a word instead of a rock. Anatomy is destiny. Dreams are often most profound when they seem the most crazy. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. Children are completely egoistic. They feel their needs intensely and strive ruthlessly to satisfy them. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The tendency to aggression is an innate, independent, instinctual disposition in man. It constitutes the powerful obstacle to culture. Civilized society is perpetually menaced with disintegration through this primary hostility of men towards one another. America is the most grandiose experiment the world has seen, but I'm afraid it is not going to be a success. America is a mistake, a giant mistake. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Illusions commend themselves to us because they save us pain and allow us to enjoy pleasure instead. We must therefore accept it without complaint when they sometimes collide with a bit of reality, against which they are dashed to pieces. Just as a cautious businessman avoids investing all his capital in one concern, so wisdom would probably admonish us also not to anticipate all our happiness from one quarter alone. Where I'd was, their ego shall be. The liberty of the individual is no gift of civilization. It was greatest before there was any civilization. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent. But those organs have not grown on him, and they still give him much trouble at times. Every normal person, in fact, is only normal on the average. His ego approximates to that of the psychotic in some part or other, and to a greater or lesser extent. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want? It is impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. Men are strong, so long as they represent a strong idea. They become powerless when they oppose it. One is very crazy when in love. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. Just as no one can be forced into belief, so no one can be forced into unbelief. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. Flowers are restful to look at. They have neither emotions nor conflicts. What progress we are making. In the Middle Ages, they would have burned me. Now they are content with burning my books. The ego is not master in its own house. Religion is an illusion, and it derives its strength from the fact that it falls in with our instinctual desires. Analogies, it is true, decide nothing, but they can make one feel more at home. A certain degree of neurosis is of inestimable value as a drive, especially to a psychologist. A belligerent state permits itself every such misdeed, every such act of violence, as would disgrace the individual. Analysis does not set out to make pathological reactions impossible, but to give the patient's ego freedom to decide one way or another. Incidentally, why was it that none of all the pious ever discovered psychoanalysis? Why did it have to wait for a completely godless Jew? Obviously, one must hold oneself responsible for the evil impulses of one's dreams. In what other way can one deal with them, unless the content of the dream rightly understood is inspired by alien spirits? It is part of my own being. Like the physical, the psychical is not necessarily in reality what it appears to us to be. We believe that civilization has been created under the pressure of the exigencies of life at the cost of satisfaction of the instincts. We have long observed that every neurosis has the result, and therefore probably the purpose, of forcing the patient out of real life, of alienating him from actuality. Where they love, they do not desire, and where they desire, they do not love. Were we fully to understand the reasons for other people's behavior, it would all make sense. Words have a magical power. They can bring either the greatest happiness or deepest despair. They can transfer knowledge from teacher to student. Words enable the orator to sway his audience and dictate its decisions. Words are capable of arousing the strongest emotions and prompting all men's actions. Look into the depths of your own soul and learn first to know yourself. Then you will understand why this illness was bound to come upon you, and perhaps you will thenceforth avoid falling ill. Maturity is the ability to postpone gratification. One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. The only unnatural sexual behavior is none at all. Knowledge is the intellectual manipulation of carefully verified observations. The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick, since objectively neither has any existence. By asking this question, one is merely admitting to a store of unsatisfied libido to which something else must have happened, a kind of fermentation leading to sadness and depression. It is not attention that the child is seeking, but love. Religion is a system of wishful illusions, together with a disavowal of reality, such as we find nowhere else but in a state of blissful, hallucinatory confusion. Religion's 11th commandment is, "Thou shalt not question." Love is a state of temporary psychosis. Life, as we find it, is too hard for us. It brings us too many pains, disappointments, and impossible tasks. In order to bear it, we cannot dispense with palliative measures. There are perhaps 3 such measures: powerful deflections, which cause us to make light of our misery; substitutive satisfactions, which diminish it; and intoxicating substances, which make us insensible to it. The sexual life of adult women is a dark continent for psychology. From error to error, one discovers the entire truth. Psychiatry is the art of teaching people how to stand on their own feet while reclining on couches. When a man is freed of religion, he has a better chance to live a normal and wholesome life. The aim of psychoanalysis is to relieve people of their neurotic unhappiness so that they can be normally unhappy. Where does a thought go when it's forgotten? Words have a magical power. They can either bring the greatest happiness or the deepest despair. Human beings are funny. They long to be with the person they love, but refuse to admit openly. Some are afraid to show even the slightest sign of affection because of fear that their feelings may not be recognized, or even worse, returned. But one thing about human beings puzzles me the most is their conscious effort to be connected with the object of their affection, even if it kills them slowly within. All family life is organized around the most damaged person in it.